Mr. Speaker, there's a considerable amount of detail in the budget review and the estimates of national expenditure, the thickest book that you see here, on government spending plans and service delivery targets. I will highlight just a few points. Consolidated government expenditure is budgeted to increase by 8.1% a year from 1.1 trillion to 1.3 trillion in 2015-16, but still within the parameters that I outlined earlier on. Allocations for employment programs increases by 13.5% a year over the next 3 years. There will be higher funding for employment projects of non-governmental organizations and for working for fisheries. Minister Jumat Peterson, do we see a smile? The expanded public works program aims to support 684,000 full-time equivalent jobs in 13-14. Additional allocations are made for the sheltered employment factories of the Department of Labour and to support the work of the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation and Arbitration. Consolidated spending on health and social protection is 268 billion rands in the coming year. Health infrastructure remains a priority. In 2012, a total of 1,900 health facilities and 49 nursing colleges were in different stages of planning, construction, and refurbishment. Substantial improvements in the social assistance payment systems are in progress, providing easier access for recipients to their grants. The cost of social grants payments has been reduced from 32 rands to 16 rands per disbursement. Thank you, Minister Dlamini. Spending on education, sport, and culture will amount to 233 billion rands in 13-14. Over the period ahead, the basic education sector will focus on improving numeracy and literacy, expanding enrollment in grade R, and reducing school infrastructure backlogs. Together with the broader education infrastructure grant, some 24 billion rands is available to provincial education departments for infrastructure over the next 3 years. But they must spend that money. 700 million rands has been allocated over the MTEF period for the Technical Secondary Schools Recapitalization Grant. This will finance construction and refurbishment of 259 workshops and training of over 1,500 technology teachers. Transfers to higher education institutions increased from some 20.4 billion rands this year to 24.6 billion rands in 15-16. The total number of students enrolled in higher education institutions is expected to increase from 910,000 currently to 990,000 in 2015. Funding has been allocated for the construction of new universities in the Northern Cape and in Mpumalanga to commence this year, as Minister Nzimande has announced earlier. Expenditure on economic services in 2013-14 will amount to 48 billion rands, including 5.3 billion rands for the Manufacturing Competitiveness Enhancement Program and the 2.9 billion rands for special economic zones. Additional allocations include 450 million rands over 3 years to the Economic Development Department for the Small Enterprise Finance Agency. The Department of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries will continue its support for smallholder farmers. Additional funding goes to the Department of Mineral Resources to support beneficiation and rehabilitate derelict and ownerless mines. The allocation to the Department of Science and Technology includes 2 billion rands to support the Square Kilometre Array project. Expenditure on transport, energy and communications will amount to some 89 billion rands next year. The allocations to the Department of Transport increases from 42 billion rands next year to 53 billion rands in 15-16, reflecting increased allocations to the Passenger Rail Agency for its rolling stock procurement program and further investment in the national road network. Additional funding goes to the integrated public transport networks in urban areas and for provincial road maintenance. The Integrated National Electrification Grant is allocated additional funding to increase the number of new electricity connections by some 645,000 over the next 3 years. The Solar Water Geyser program will be continued until 15-16, and Centec will receive 599 million over the medium term for the migration from analog to digital terrestrial television. Local government, community amenities and housing are allocated 132 billion rands in 13-14. The largest increases go to bulk water, water treatment and water distribution projects, and allocations to the local government equitable share. 4.3 billion rands is allocated to a new grant administered by the Department of Water Affairs, providing for water treatment, distribution, demand management, and support for rural municipalities. The Municipal Infrastructure Support Agency of the Department of Cooperative Governance receives 820 million rands to provide technical assistance to rural and low-capacity municipalities. Funding for improving human settlements will grow from 26.2 billion rands to some 30.5 billion rands over the next 3 years, including 1 billion rands to support the informal settlement upgrading program in mining towns. Social housing receives an additional allocation of 685 million rands. The General Public Services function is allocated 57 billion rands. This includes the SARS budget of some 9 billion rands, which is just over 1% of revenue to be collected. So the cost of collecting all of those billions of rands is just 1%. Other agencies must start emulating that. The Department of Public Works reprioritized 464 million rands over the medium term to fund its, my scroller is moving too fast, its turnaround strategy with focuses on lease and property management. The Public Service Commission received 71 million rands to combat corruption and address grievances. Over the MTEF period, the Department of Home Affairs will spend 1 billion rands on its information systems modernization program, which has already led to substantial reductions in time required to produce official documents. Congratulations, Minister Pandor. The allocations for defense, public order and safety amount to 154 billion rands in 2013-14. Provision is made for peacekeeping operations in the Central African Republic, where 400 Defence Force personnel have been deployed. The Department of Police has reprioritized 2.5 billion rands over the 3 years to improve detective and forensic capability. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development receives 1.2 billion rands for criminal justice sector revamp and a modernization program. There is increased funding. Minister Hadebe is not happy. There is increased funding allocated to the National Prosecuting Authority for the Tutuzela care centers. The Public Protector of South Africa receives funding to increase its investigative capacity and additional funds. You better match them on this side. Additional funds are also made available to Legal Aid South Africa and the Human Rights Commission.